Peace TV reporters have been active at the UN headquarters since 2010, the age of former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. They are often invited to gather pictures and news about high-level meetings and events at the UN headquarters. We usually report live on the scene the events of dozens of countries, including the US, France, the UK, Israel, Germany, Russia, Egypt, Kuwait, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Morocco, and the EU at the UN headquarters and their residences in New York. Our news reports have, in part, kept the international community up to date with the work of different governments so that people everywhere will know the great efforts and contributions of the UN to world peace, international affairs, and multilateralism.
I'm Silvana Koch-Merin. I used to be a politician, and now I'm the president and founder of Women Political Leaders, and I have the honor and pleasure of moderating, chairing this session. So, what are we going to do? We will have a discussion between experts and expert politicians on the topic of the Parliamentary-Civil Society Alliance Propelling Women, Peace and Security and Youth, Peace and Security to New Heights. If we look into the world right now, we see that conflicts are ravaging in many places of the world. The most affected in those conflicts are women, is youth, and the ones that are the most excluded from preventing conflict, from finding peace, from building lasting peace are exactly those groups. And there's a united ambition of everybody here in the room and online, I'm convinced, to change that. And these are the new heights that we want to achieve. And by this, we need collective action, we need collaboration, we need to work together, because single voices alone, they can be very strong and powerful, but what's unstoppable is collective action. When we all get together behind the same goal and work on it from very different directions. So we want to raise awareness among those that have a voice, but also bring more people on board for this kind of collective action. And we want to explore ways on how to implement the ideas, the goodwill, but maybe also the political decisions that are eventually taken. How do we turn that into reality? And we've got a phenomenal list of speakers here, and we have a phenomenal group of people in the room and online. And without further ado, I pass on for opening remarks to Sarah Hendricks, who is the Acting Assistant Secretary General of UN Women. Sarah, please.
Thank you so much. I will speak right into the mic as you guided. It's fantastic to be here today and to see such a full room of dedicated champions in this important space. And welcome also to the many, many who are online as well. I'm bringing a note of welcome from UN Women, but here we are gathered both as friends, as colleagues. Many of you are honorable members of Parliament. You are distinguished guests and excellencies. It really is my honor to welcome you to UN Women and to today's very important discussion. Here in New York, it is a rainy day. And so many of you have fought through traffic and along a busy subway system to get here. And we are appreciative because this is such a critical and catalytic conversation. It is a conversation on the role of parliaments in implementing the Women, Peace and Security agenda. And certainly, as Silvana has mentioned, we all know very concretely that the world is facing so many unprecedented and intersecting crises and challenges. And within that, we all know that we must harness the very full potential of women and girls. And it is that building alliances across generations, building alliances with women's groups, with networks, and also, especially and importantly, with parliamentarians, that is critical to attaining the change that we collectively seek for and with women and girls.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, I'm just checking if we need more coffee. My name is Mavic Cabrera Balyeza. I know it's not easy to pronounce, but Mavic is short for Maria Victoria. Some people find that easier to remember. My assignment for today is to walk you through the objectives of this panel discussion. But before doing that, I would like to share our experience, or that served as impetus for this, break it down, translated in ways that speak to the realities in local communities. And in such convening, we have all leaders, all sectors represented, including women political leaders. So they were approaching an elections that year, and actually the first, I believe, at the local governance level. So it was very important, the first after the series of peace processes. So there were about 10 women who are already occupying positions, and some who are entering politics for the first time. So it was a good mix. And they shared with us their motivation for entering politics. And it was so inspiring. They represented different parties. But equally, if not more importantly, they shared their challenges, where they were hoping organizations like the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders and all the other participants would be able to support them. What are those challenges? And these are some of what they have shared. First of all, the lack of party support and exclusion from decision-making party structures, even if they already belong in that political party. They are at the lowest level of the hierarchy in the political parties.
I, as has been mentioned, I'm with the Parliament of Canada. I'm an independent senator, and I want to acknowledge this morning that the Parliament of Canada is situated on the unceded, unsurrendered lands of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin peoples. And also that I come from Manitoba, which is Treaty 1 territory, and it is also the homeland of the Métis Nation in Canada. I want to also acknowledge that I work in a place that has gender parity, the Senate of Canada. We are only the second Senate in the world to achieve gender parity, and we achieved it very recently. And I will add to that as a point for us to think about the reality for parliamentarians. And that is, just because we achieve gender parity doesn't mean that that instantly changes the patriarchal institutions that we have to navigate in actually bringing in laws and policies that will make the kind of changes that we're here to talk about today. I will note that at various points along the way in my 6+ years as a senator, I have been surprised at the number of times that my women colleagues have seemed rather fond of our patriarchal ways, and it's not a simple gender matter. It has a great deal to do with the alliances and the relationships built on common values, and that really is, I think, at the heart of Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. We have very important value statements. We also have, 23 years ago, the very first Security Council resolution that was drafted primarily by women and with huge influence from women in the South. And I think you can see that not only in the resolution itself, but in the whole cluster of subsequent resolutions that have been needed in order to really make the details of what does it take to implement women, peace, and security. Really dig down on the practical realities of implementation. And this is something that parliamentarians have to grapple with all the time, because so many people who aren't deeply familiar with the parliamentary process will think, oh, you passed a new law. Great. It's only the beginning. We always have to be trying to see the matchup of resources, the matchup of the kind of staff with the kind of commitment that you need to actually move from words on a document to action on the ground. And when I say on the ground, I mean on the front lines. And for the most part, when parliamentarians go home to their communities, that's our front line. That's when we're able to engage, and that's, I would say, the parliamentarians that I know around the world that are committed to the Women, Peace and Security agenda, committed to the Youth, Peace and Security agenda, and committed to the cluster of Security Council resolutions affecting for children affected by conflict.
Slightly in office for a year now, and one of the first agendas I picked up when I came into office was to at least create the path for having the youth action plan for YPS, because in Kenya we've done a bit of work in women, peace, security, but I'll say a bit of work because it hasn't gone as far. Unfortunately, with our policies, most of it is affected by the elections that happen after every 5 years. So the previous government had a minister for gender who was a woman, and she picked up the WPS as a passion project. And I would say passion project because she was really pushing for it through and through, but unfortunately their government had finished their term, and little effort actually had been done in that period of time with the members of Parliament.
On many occasions, the implementation is very low, and there is nobody that really monitors the different ministries, either whether they have implemented the National Action Plan or not. But the dissemination also helps parliamentarians to encourage the local community to identify specific or local challenges that affect them, so that the national government, actually from the state legislative assembly to the national legislative assembly, should take it up. Women in the parliament have taken up several of these challenges which are raised to them. One of the major challenges where the women of South Sudan are facing in terms of women and security is the cattle rustling, which is continuous. It started as a traditional thing, but it's now becoming a major conflict issue, and it affects women and children, because when young boys go to cattle rustling, the women who are left behind are affected. They are moved, they run randomly, they leave all their things, and they are suffering.
And slowly and gradually, over the course of last few years, we have worked in emergencies, conflicts and crises with women directly in order to better understand their needs and challenges that they face, and we try to work with parliamentarians directly in order to mainstream their experiences in the national agenda and policy making through initiatives such as forming alliances, networks, and launching different fellowship programs and peace-building initiatives in Pakistan. So over the course of last 10 years, we have encountered various challenges while working directly with parliamentarians and civil society organization leaders in the country and at regional level as well. So one of the core things that I would really like to stress here is, and before moving on to the policy arena, is that there is a strong need to work towards capacity building of parliamentarians on women, peace and security agenda and youth peace and security agenda, not just in Pakistan, but at regional level as well. In Pakistan, we currently do not have a women action plan focused on, a national action plan focused on women, peace and security. But very recently, the government launched a national action plan on gender sensitive responding towards climate crises. But even that action plan had a lot of information, had a lot of essential things missing, because women are rarely ever made part of the conversation, and parliamentarians who are sitting in spaces where decisions are being made do not have enough knowledge, technical knowledge and experience vis-a-vis women, peace and security agenda. So there is a very strong need from my or our personal social cultural context.
When we requested to organize a high-level consultation where for the first time we had the security sector, all stakeholders to orient, and I was the resource person to orient on women, peace and security. So it was this very first consultation after conflict. And I recall after that half-day consultation, the next day when I opened, the FM radios are very popular in Nepal, the community radios, I could hear this minister talk about this 1325, which she had never talked about before. And it was so exciting to hear when she was interviewed to say how important 1325, when we look at global policies, how it impacts the national policies and how you need to bring in the national experiences to the global level to influence global policies. So it was this lady, who was talking about that. And that actually helped us to build this collaboration with women parliamentarians to develop, that propelled to develop a national action plan in Nepal. We were the 24th country, I think, to develop a national action plan in 2010. And it was a very, very close collaboration with the civil society, the government, and the legislators, particularly women parliamentarians. And we, with the help of GNWP, we also developed a localization guideline. And we worked with the government to develop this localization guideline to integrate into the local plans. However, it's very common in our parts of Asia to have change of bureaucrats very frequently. And you work with one bureaucrat who you convince. And just at the point when we were about to finalize a localization guideline, the officer changed. And the new one refused to understand what a localization guideline. And at that point, I do recall now, it was the women parliamentarians, because we had engaged them in the procedure of developing this national action plan, who actually directed the bureaucrats to say that this is a part of a very important localization guideline. So what I'm trying to say is that women parliamentarians and few male allies within the parliament, you need to work with them as well, can play a very, very important role in integrating women, peace and security agenda in the local plans, in the provincial plans, in the federal plans. We had a special trust fund called the Nepal Peace Trust Fund, which was not at all gender responsive. So the oversight budgetary role of the women parliamentarians helped us to bring in that gender responsiveness into this national budget as well. Coming to 2 points very shortly. One, about my role in the CEDAW committee. And I think CEDAW mechanism is extremely important, particularly now with the General Recommendation 30. We may have a national action plan, but there's no accountability mechanism. So it is through the General Recommendation 30 within the CEDAW committee to make governments accountable to integrate WPS as well as YPS now, particularly with girls, because at the moment we are drafting a General Recommendation 40 on women's meaningful participation.
We're talking a lot here about how to actually implement laws and plans once they're actually crafted. And I think that is where this synergy that is the theme of today's talk between civil society and government can actually propel the action that is so critically needed, because we do have, as pointed out, 107 national action plans for WPS. And while there are some successes, I would say it's critical to energize the implementation. And with the YPS engagement, I just have a first 2 comments that I think could really help bring in youth. I'm discouraged by my own research showing many young women do not want to enter the formal political arena, and I do think that technology-facilitated gender-based violence is a really critical new problem, very potent issue that we must get after. But given that there is a certain attraction to the civil society activism, I would recommend we take hold of that while also advocating young women come into politics. And I think one way to do that is to really amplify within the plans the climate issue. Only 17 of the 107 plans actually have specific climate-related provisions. So I think as these plans are revised, adding climate and putting meat on the bones is important. The other way, since many women are involved in civil society activities to gain more participation, is to have them explicitly given roles within these national action plans to craft the plans, to monitor the plans, and help implement them, including participating in peacekeeping missions and in observer capacities.
And thank you so much for highlighting the issue of inclusion of women in the parliament, but also I want to highlight, since we are in the constitutional process in Syria, I hope also, since it's legalized mechanism, to highlight also women inclusion in writing constitution around the world, because this is like affect actually the elections system, like with the parliament or others. So to start with there, and not only having increased the women participation in the parliament, in the writing the constitution, but also how to make it more gender sensitive in order to write the constitution. So I would like to hear any advice on for Syrian women, how to increase the participation of Syrian women in the constitution.
That I have is, as you know, we are all at a crossroad right now. The Women, Peace and Security agenda is being tested, but also global security. It is an opportunity, it's terrible to say it like that, but to operationalize the Women and Peace and Security agenda. We have this opportunity to really make it concrete. What I see is that maybe we need to strengthen, increase broaden the alliance with women in politics, but also with women in foreign policy. And those women that are actually at the table in the bigger negotiation, in the global negotiations. And here, I base that on the fact that decision to go to war is far too serious to just be left to women. So, to men, sorry. What I would like to bring here to our reflection is how do we, sorry about the word for lack of another, use the current global context to step up, to really push for effective women peace and security agenda. And I feel that if we are being tested right now, and if we do not rise to that challenge, we'll continue being in a narrative on the women peace and security. So this is what I wanted to share. The other point I wanted to make is that in West Africa, we are seeing countries overtaken by coup. And what we have seen is that there has been a fracture between civil society and government and parliament. And we have seen parliament being captured by government who have themselves done unconstitutional coups. Sorry, constitutional coup, between quotes. Coming here, the role of women, to me, is very important in holding them to account. And I feel that women have to really go deeper and work on governance issue as citizens, and not only limit ourselves to the women peace and security agenda, a women agenda, but also embrace this governance as a citizen to influence more. And but I'm sorry, I'm probably in a monologue here, but here it also it also raised the challenge of women as
I'm a new admitted for the PhD candidate. My name is Haren. I'm from Eritrea, and I was a former political officer in the African Union Commission in the Department of Peace and Security and Political Affairs. I have two suggestions and one question to Ms. Linda Robinson.
I'm really sorry, we don't have much time, so if you can take it super short, because we'd love to answer the other questions. If you don't, sorry about this.
Okay, I will proceed to the question. You've raised it, the US government have taken unilateral sanctions against, for those who commit sexual violence on the ongoing conflict in Sudan, but taken as vis-a-vis with what's going on in the global security, the unilateral sanctions doesn't brought the peace that we want. So what other measures the ongoing political discourse shall we introduce in preventing the sexual violence on conflicts? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for pointing out who the question is directed to that.
Thank you. It'll be a quick answer. Let me just add an adjective. I'm a feminist human rights lawyer, and there's excellent research on constitutional activism post-conflict. We can talk, but in a nutshell, one of the single most effective things to try to do when building a new constitution after conflict is get reference to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and to the Security Council Resolution 1325. And even if it's one short reference to incorporating international standards, bringing it into domestic law, bringing it into the Constitution, that can make a huge difference.
Thank you, Marie-Lou. Moving on to...
Normally, sanctions in the U.S. has been criticized widely for you going to the sanctions toolbox, if you will, to try to use its influence and power of the purse. But I think it's important contextually to say there are multilateral sanctions, there's conditionality of multilateral assistance, there's of course at the high end of action, the International Criminal Court, right, for war crimes that would include these kinds of gender-based crimes. And ultimately, and I think this is relevant to the rash of coups that are afflicting many countries in the Sahel region. When there is no partner to mediate with, you cannot just stand by. And so I think there is a need for always an open door to mediate and negotiate in conflicts, but when crimes are being committed and people are dying, there needs to be that punitive toolbox as well. Thank you.
I think it's a real opportunity. A member of parliament in any country represents a certain constituency, but by using the CSO network, they can expand their breadth. They can help popularize the issues. One individual MP can't get a law passed, but when she's working with somebody in 5 other cities or towns or in rural communities, and those people are going to their member of parliament and saying, I want action, those members of parliament say, I could be an ally to her or him. I need to get action on this, or this is going to be an election issue. So CSOs ask questions during election debates. Elections matter. Put these issues on the agenda. And CSOs are there were talk about resources that people have. You have networks, you have fast research, you have things that, the patriarchy, as Mary Lou would say, or the traditional systems can't withstand the force of all that energy and the ways around. And by working with older, seasoned campaigners, that can give you, you can give them energy, but they can also give you their experience and their wisdom. Lastly, these national action plans provide a tool. The governments are signing things over here at the UN. They have an obligation to implement them. Use those tools. Demand parliamentary input, demand parliamentary scrutiny, demand the laws and the budgets that implement them, and help popularize why things are happening. Why do we have to pass these laws? You're only going to get the support for them if you have the public understanding them. Otherwise, you slip back, as in this country and many other countries, on things that are important to women, and I would argue to all of society. Two last points. CSOs are a great source of future parliamentarians and future diplomats, and both with parliaments and our data, the IPU is now working on a motion in one of our next assembly to find out how countries, parliaments, are going to advance women ambassadors in the GA. It's, again, 24%, not good enough. We have to do better, so we're going to pass a motion on that, hopefully. And all of you, call your member of parliament. Tell them when they're doing a good thing. Tell them when they're doing a bad thing. If you call when they're doing a good thing, they'll listen to you twice when you're calling it a bad thing. But they're not mind readers. You have to stay engaged. It's not good enough to just vote every 4 years or 2 years. You've got to stay engaged. You've got to keep them in your sights and help them do the things you want to do. And I think this session is fabulous, and I thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you, Patty. I couldn't think of a more perfect closing to this session, and let me again also pick up on the point, be the echo chamber for positive feedback and criticism. We talk a lot about accountability, and that's extremely important, but it also makes a huge difference if parliamentarians hear when they're doing something well, and see that this is also taken into account. So I just want to finally close by a round of massive thank yous. Thank you to all of you for coming, for being part of the session online. Thank you for staying with us and for participating also on the chat in this conversation. Thank you to the co-host, the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders and UN Women. And thank you to our fabulous speakers, those that are sitting here, those that are online. And again, this is just the beginning, not the beginning, it's a continuation of the conversation that many of you are having day in, day out. And it's bringing it to the environment of the UN General Assembly. And we will not stop here, of course not. And this collaboration and this collective action is something that we need to work on going future. So please, whatever you think as essence of wisdom comes from the session, take it with you, spread it. It's a gift that gets bigger by sharing. And have a great week, and hopefully by 2030 we'll have reached those heights that we wanted to see. Thank you.